All right, hi guys, thanks for being here. My name is Jess, Carroll, Devillier. I am studying psychology and environmental humanities here at St. Edward's, so that led my research to look into the intersection of psychology, human behavior, and thought processes, and what motivates sustainable action. So, the title of my study is Moral Message Framing and its Influence on Sustainable Behaviors, which we'll get into what that means. Go ahead. To start with some literature review, specifically what is convenience habits, how does that pertain to the climate crisis, and why does it even matter? We know that large corporations have a detrimental effect on the state of the environment and the climate crisis, but also we as individuals do have control on small actions that we make. Convenience habits, everyday behaviors can have a negative impact as well, and those are things that we can control. Modern society obviously prioritizes speed and efficiency and convenience, which normalizes these habits and makes it to where it becomes harder to want to change that. College students in particular are very likely to rely on high-impact convenience habits because we are facing issues such as financial constraints and time pressures and academic stress. It makes it hard to obviously feel motivated to do anything, especially when it comes to changing things that are habitual. That leads me to discuss two very popular phenomenons in psychology research, which are the attitude-behavior gap and cognitive dissonance. The attitude-behavior gap is when your beliefs and thoughts do not align with your behaviors and actions. We know that a lot of people care about the climate and care about the climate crisis and feel concerned about it, but it's hard to always align your beliefs with your actions. So this is true for unsustainable habits that are a part of everyday life and are very normalized, like I said. So this disconnect is what is called the attitude-behavior gap. This is very similar to cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort that people feel when they recognize that their actions don't align with their values and their morals and feelings. So this led me to think about what actually triggers a change in unsustainable behaviors, what makes people want to feel motivated, want to do something differently, how can we get across to those people to make a positive impact. We know that scientific data alone isn't always the most beneficial. It is educational, yes, but because there is not that emotional appeal, it doesn't always contribute to making people feel motivated. But previous research showed that having an emotional connection to whatever it is that is important to you brings motivation and inspires action. So because of this, messaging that appeals to emotions is more effective in influencing individual behaviors because you are appealing to someone personally. And therefore, if that proves to be beneficial in sustainability messaging, that can inform further campaigns. So that is what I was interested in looking into. So what is moral messaging, moral framing? What does that mean? So moral framing refers to the way that a message is presented in order to appeal to someone's core values, their morality, their beliefs. Appealing to someone personally helps them feel more influenced when it comes to decision making and behavior. So I looked into 4 frames, each designed to trigger a different emotional response. The first frame is care. That is supposed to appeal to people's empathy and concern for other people, specifically other people, animals, and ecosystems. Fairness was focusing on environmental justice and responsibility towards others, especially impoverished communities. Guilt, which highlights what I was talking about when it comes to the attitude-behavior gap and cognitive dissonance, that disconnect between values and actions. And then fear, which proposes potential future consequences, drawing attention to what is going to happen in the future if changes don't arise. So worry for future generations. Each of these frames are to target a different emotional pathways. I also tried to split them into negative and positive based messaging, so the care and fairness frames to be more positive based messaging, appealing to good emotions, so caring about others, wanting fairness for others, and then negative based messaging like guilt and fear that makes you feel negative feelings. In previous research, it showed that positive-based messaging was more influential as opposed to negative-based messaging. So I kind of wanted to split it between those to see that contradiction as well. So that leads me to my hypothesis and the purpose of my study. I wanted to see how different types of moral messaging influence specifically college students' willingness to change these convenience-driven behaviors and behaviors that have a negative impact on the environment. This was motivated by the attitude-behavior gap that I discussed, and really just how the role of emotions and moral framings can provoke like different type of messaging when it comes to language. So I hypothesized, like I said, that the positive-based messaging, like care and fairness, would have a higher rate in motivating people as opposed to the guilt and fear-based messaging. And then I hypothesized that there would be stronger emotional responses to the messages that had a greater likelihood of participants intending to change their behaviors. So I just basically was like, if there is an emotional response, then people will feel more motivated. Research questions at the bottom. So to outline what convenience habits I discussed in my survey and to give examples, here are some outlined here. So that would be fast fashion, food choices like choosing quick and convenient options or overconsumption of red meat, single-use plastics, transportation like driving yourself rather than public transport, walking, etc. And recycling, so proper disposal of waste. These are things that have a better alternative that is more eco-friendly, but we often choose the less eco-friendly option because it is convenient. So I did a survey-based study. I did it within subjects design, meaning every participant was appealed to each frame. And I started out by asking baseline questions about their attitudes towards the environment already, what habits they already partook in. And then I had my 4 moral framing sections. So I would have a couple paragraphs about per frame where I was discussing these habits, what impact they have on the environment, but altering the language to appeal to each frame that I was trying to, each emotion I was trying to provoke. So my results actually showed the direct opposite of what I hypothesized. The fear and guilt-based frames had a much higher level of producing motivation, and the fairness frame had the lowest in producing motivation. So in this case, negative-based messaging seemed to be more influential than positive-based messaging. Whenever it came to emotional response, like concern, there were no significant differences found across message types, meaning that emotional language can make anybody feel concerned, but it differs when it comes to motivating people to take action. So that seemed to be the same across all frames. And then moral responsibility was the same as motivation, and that the negative-based frames were more influential. So why does this matter? It tells us that information alone is not enough. We already have an awareness of climate change and its impacts, but appealing to emotion is what would drive action. So emotional engagement accompanied with scientific knowledge is what makes people feel appealed to and motivated, and once there is going to be influential in future sustainability messaging and campaigning. This study showed that message framing did influence motivation to some sort. Even if results were not extremely significant, it did have an influence and can be applied to future messaging. And so implications for this was, if the goal is to influence action, then messaging should be strategically designed, not just informational. If it has an impact, then might as well do it. These are a couple takeaways. So essentially, messaging does play a critical role, and what language you use, what type of emotions you're appealing to can have an influence on your audience. So this study did prove that. And then in conclusion, I think college students are a key population for behavior change, as we are the ones who are about to enter the world and the workforce, and our habits that we have now will shape future decision making. So if we can learn how to appeal to those populations, then we can, do good things, have good impacts on the environment. And some future suggestions for research. I definitely would expand my sample size. My sample was really small. So if I had a larger population and a more diverse population, maybe like beyond just college students, then I feel like I would get a lot more influential results, inform that. And I would want to examine long-term behavior change through like maybe a series of surveys over time where I could go back and see what people actually changed and did, rather than just like suggesting what they wanted to do, either through like surveys or interviews, something of that sort. I would explore additional moral framing strategies and investigate like real-world applications of that type of messaging in campaigning. So yeah. That is that. Thank you.
Okay, question for Jess.
Got it.
Do you think that the fear and guilt tactic that I put on the answer to the survey was useful? Because I feel like I remember taking it and I got to that section and I was like, hey, maybe I know that.
Maybe. I honestly feel like a face-to-face interview would feel like more like guilty or fearful, like if you're having someone deliver that to your face. But I don't know, it could have like the opposite effect. It could be different. I'm not sure. I'd have to test it out.
If you were to continue with this study and survey different groups of people, do you think that your results would be different, and if so, why?
Yes, I think specifically age would be very different. Like I was saying, college students are like a population that are generally pretty educated about climate and what's like currently going on. But imagine you like extend that to all of the country, up to like 80 years old. I think that like a higher age range and a larger geographic area, they would have very like different beliefs about like the climate and caring about it and feeling motivated to want to do anything about it. So yeah, I think if I were to expand the population, it would be very different.
Can you speak a little bit about the diversity in your sample size, like in terms of like age or maybe like race, or like what kind of variables did you collect?
I didn't do a ton of demographic questions. The age range was 18 to 25. It was all St. Edward's students. I did take some like questions about like what type of housing they were, if they were like off-campus or on-campus housing. I feel like that plays into convenience of like living situation. I didn't take like race or anything, but for the most part, the age range was all in the same because I wanted it to be like a younger college population.
So I'm a professor here, and we commonly read this journal that comes in our inbox every day, the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I've seen articles in the Chronicle a few times alerting their readers to the fact that college-age students, I guess a significant number of college-age students have climate grief, or grief over the degradation of our natural resources and our environment. So I don't know, it's more a comment than a question, but it seems to kind of point into what you're doing and highlight the fact that you're in psychology and environmental humanities, and it's kind of pulling those two fields together.
Yeah. I took a ecology psychology course where we talked about like climate anxiety or what's called like eco grief. And yes, that is very prevalent amongst our peers and population, and what like motivated the research as well. Yeah.
And then, but it doesn't seem to translate. It doesn't seem to have an effect on the convenience factor. It's like you can't escape that convenience. Like I looked at the list and I felt really guilty.
I do these things too. I do them too. I mean, they're hard to escape. I think it's more so just like the awareness behind it and like limiting when you can, than like, having to like make a drastic change and cut off everything. It's like not realistic in the world we live in. But I think that, if you're aware that these things are doing this specifically to the environment, then you'll question it whenever you like go to Amazon to like put something in your cart, you'll remember like, oh, but this is gonna happen. So more so to bring awareness, but yes.
So were you the one who wrote like all of the statements? And if so, like what went into like the language that you chose and like writing all of them? How long did it take?
I worked with a couple people to write them, my advisor, another professor, and I referred to a lot of like previous studies I looked at in my research. I looked at like the positive based messaging and like specific phrases or like tone to use to like bring that sense of emotion through the messaging. So I would kind of like write up what I wanted to say, like fast fashion is bad because this is what it's doing. You're over consuming and being wasteful, but then I would alter that to be like, okay, it's bad because you're creating like a detrimental impact to like this community of people or like this community of animals. This ecosystem is like declining because of this action. So yeah, a lot of thought went into like the specific frame and the emotion behind it, and also like being educational about the habits themselves. But I had a lot of help, which was nice. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jess. I have a few words from her mentor, Laura Martin, who could not be here, so I will deliver her words.
She says, Jessie has taken on this important topic with passion and enthusiasm. The importance of sustainability takes on a new understanding when we begin to realize the impact of the messaging that abounds in advertising and culture. I am proud of her and hope you will show your support of her efforts. Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you should wear this to graduation as well.
Will do.
Okay. You're welcome to come up and take pictures.